when they say forgive and forget. And I could never understand that because there was a lot of pain that was inflicted on me when I was younger. And I thought, well, I'm going to just forgive and forget it. Okay, it's going to make me easier.
Yeah. I think writing is that, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely.
I read a quote somewhere that says that writing, I think it was Ernest Hemingway who said this, like when we write, writers are actually bleeding. They're like bleeding into the pages, right? So
definitely.
it's true. Yeah.
Because I know when I had to go back and like recall a lot of my things that I was talking about, once I had to, I said to you before, I had to delve in with more information. And that's when I really realized, wow, how easily it is just to quickly just gloss things over or brush things over until you start sort of peeling back all the layers. And for myself, I dealt with all those sort of situations, but because I was reliving things, and also too, I'm older now.
Yeah.
So, and I'm so far removed from that, that time frame that I'm looking through different eyes.
Yeah.
And you question different things.
Yes.
Like now at say 55 to compare to 35 and 25 and so forth. And it's interesting how your viewpoint starts to change. But I actually found it was quite healing in a way, because there was obviously some really buried, deeply buried things there that I didn't realize that were still not affecting me, but still obviously there, because it wouldn't have mattered. If there was no reaction, well, then it wouldn't have mattered. But because I was still reacting, I thought, it was a hurt, but it was also grief and loss at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was also, oh my God, how did I get through all that?
Yeah. So I always tell my clients this, sometimes we know the pain, we understand the pain on a logical level, we know what we've been through, we understand it, right, on a mental level, but the body has not caught up, or the body is still sitting with the pain and is buried inside. So when we intellectualize our pain, we don't really address the pain that's locked up in our body. And so what happens is, like, we get triggered by some things and you wonder, I thought I worked on this. Why am I still triggered, right? And that's because the body is responding. The nervous system, right, is still responding. There's some, it's like a loop, right? It's like a recording that's stuck in the body. And so when we really sit with the emotion, rather than trying to intellectualize it, we sit with the emotion and we don't run away from it. We really sit with it and feel the pain. And then we're unlocking something, somewhat like a mechanism in our body where the nervous system then starts to relax. And this is where the pain can be released. And that's why, we may have healed from some things and it worked at that point in time. But as we get older, we realize that, oh my God, there's still stuff, right? And that's okay. Right. And if there's still stuff, then we sit with it, and we have, as we get older, we have the maturity to deal with it, and we are able to sit with ourselves and with the pain and let the body heal. And it's
that's
very
a really
much
good way of explaining it.
Yeah. And it's very much like, when you have a broken bone, you get it fixed, right? And then you wait for it to heal. So with emotional pain, it's the same. Right, we need to kind of rewire the nervous system, and we need to wait and sit with it, be patient, like a granny or like a grandparent, right? Sitting with it, waiting, very patient, holding space, and no judgment, right? And I think that's one of the most important things, because sometimes we judge ourselves and we think that, oh, I should be healed by now. It's been 6 months, it's been 1 year, I should be over it by now, because society tells us, and sometimes the people around us tell us, right? Because they get impatient with us. They don't want to hear our stuff, right? And so, it happens. I mean, it's not about how much time, and we should not put that pressure on ourselves. And we just
definitely.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, well, that's what, years ago, was said to me that there's no time frame for grief. There's no time frame for, working through pain or anything like that. It's your time frame. It's your timeline and your time frame. That's what's important to you, because, sometimes pain's just too unbearable to work through as well. And you can only just work through a
Yeah.
bit at a time. Obviously, it depends on what it is. But I think as we get older too, like the maturity obviously is there, but you're a little bit removed from, you've got the maturity to
Yeah.
remove yourself a little bit from it, to look at it from a different logic reason, but also not to be frightened to tackle the emotional side as well.
Definitely.
And, you just chew a little bit, that's on your plate. Sometimes there are a bit more chunks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another time, I always tend to say, if you don't like what's on your plate, chew faster. But I think at some point, there's needs to be a kind of resolution within yourself just for that healing to take place,
Yeah.
just for yourself. It doesn't
Yes.
make it right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's for your own soul.
Yeah.
So you can heal and move on. So,
Yeah.
when people say, oh, you got to learn to forgive and just, it's such a big thing, but
Yeah.
I always used to find that hard to understand because particularly when I was younger, because I always found that when when they say forgive and forget, and I could never understand that because there was a lot of pain that was inflicted on me when
Yeah.
I was younger.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm going to just forgive and forget it. Okay, it's going to make me easier. But I understand it to a point now that I'm older, but not in the way that it was said.
Yeah.
It's for me, I interpret that now that to confront that situation, whatever that would be, and whether or not you look at it a little bit differently, instead of all the pain coming up as much, it's learning how to direct that pain so it's not so intense towards you, so it doesn't have
Mm.
as much impact. So it's learning how to deal and dial back some of that pain,
Yeah.
but in a way resolve it without it just brushing over,
Yeah.
like forgive and forget, but also at the same time, just somewhere you can work through where it can, sit with you, so
Yeah.
then you can deal with life better for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just how we interpret things. So
Yes.
I understand that now, but that just comes with a bit of, maturity as
Oh
well.
yeah, of course, the shift in mindset, right? Your worldview changes, so you understand things differently. Just like when people say time heals, but I do not believe that time heals. If we have a big pain, and we may want to delay the healing, and that's fine because it's just too much to handle at that point in time. So we wait for time to pass, right? As time passes, we are, more removed from it. But that's where we then say to ourselves, okay, it is time to heal now. Then I'm going to be proactive in the healing process. When we say time heals, thinking that time will take away the pain, it doesn't. Time doesn't
No.
heal. We heal. We have to be conscious about it. We have to do something about it. Time doesn't. Time just makes us much more removed from it so that we have some form of a buffer, which makes it easier to go into the healing process, right? And so expecting it to just disappear, it doesn't. It doesn't until we do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's when we get older, we can understand that a little bit better
Yeah.
because, when we're younger and something like that is said to us, we take it like logically. And I think too, as we get older, we're not as afraid to confront some of these things that you haven't been able to deal with in the past, for
Yeah.
lots of different, reasons. And I think, because at this point in time, you start to question like your direction of life. What I always say, if you know what you don't want, work out what you don't want, and go from there because it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different questions. Where am I going? What am I doing? Where, like there's like a stage 2 of life.
Yeah.
And it's really empowering if you look at it in a way where you can see it as I've got, wow, all these decisions and all these choices. Or you could look at it the same way and go, oh my God, I'm getting older. I've got this, I've got that. What have I got? Don't have that much time left. And, so the point is that you're still the same age.
Yeah.
It's just how you look at things. And then,
Yeah.
so I find that, some of those things that we've carried through, from the past, can be crippling, but it can also be at a point where it's it might be time, or you're a little bit more confident, I think, to address some of those things, because I mean, we all got to acknowledge that at some point we've all faced different things at, you know, different times. It's when it hits us, and it's understanding that we're all just human, but it's learning what to do with it so it doesn't become crippling anymore, so you can sort of start to deal with it better, so you can start to enjoy some of the other things, or make room for some other things in your life.
Yeah. And I think sometimes also is self-awareness, because I know a lot of people around me who are carrying a lot of pain, but they have no idea that it is pain, right? So they do not realize that it is some form of like a childhood stuff, or something that happened, or some conditioning that they got when they were young, and it's a pain, it's a scar that they're carrying with them, and so they behave in a certain way, or they respond to people in a certain way, or they have lack of self-confidence, or they're afraid of confrontation, they're not able to say no. I mean, all of these things are trauma responses, right? It's a reaction to something that happened to them, but they're not aware that it is a trauma response. They'll say things, oh, but this is my personality, but actually it's not, right? So it's the lack of self-awareness for most people, and that's why they remain stuck emotionally. And most people are not emotionally mature because of this. And, you know, and they take it as, oh, but, you know, I'm like this. And for them, it's fixed. Like, this is my personality and this is it. Take it or leave it, you know, but it's actually a lot of like trauma, a lot of pain. And if they are willing, or, you know, if something happens and they wake up, right, and they realize that, oh my God, you know, this pain I've been carrying with me, then the shift can happen. Then it seemingly looks like they have shifted their personality, but actually it's not. They're just going through the healing process. So it's so interesting, you know, to observe all of these things, you know, as I watch people around me, you know, like, okay, my friends, if you're listening to this podcast, know that I am observing, but I do not comment. So it's not my place, right? Everyone is on their own journey. And so, you know, for me, it's all about, you know, when a person is ready, right? If they sit with themselves, I feel that is very important. Not to be afraid to sit with themselves and sit with their thoughts and see what comes up, right? And there may be something there for them to explore. Yeah.
So what would you say to, I mean, that's a really good, valid, you know, point with what you were saying, because, you know, I also see it behind the pain, there's anger as well. Yeah. So a lot of different emotions. There are people who aren't even aware of it. Yeah. And so in your situation, Shamla, what would you do, or what tips would you give for someone who's in that moment of, you know, where they're just starting to become a little bit self-aware of maybe just starting to realise, you know, that they're ready to confront some of those painful situations, but it's not so much that they're ready, because sometimes things just happen.
Yeah.
That allows us the opportunity. So if they're faced with that decision, or, you know, those chain of events, what's some of the tips that you would do or say to someone, or can give to someone to help them through that process?
Yeah. When these sort of thing happens, at the beginning, it's very confusing, because they start to think that, oh, they have lost control, or maybe they got triggered by someone and they start to think that, oh, that person is making me really angry, it's that person's fault, right? So there's a tendency to project the heavy emotions that are coming up. So the first thing to ask ourselves is, wow, what is going on? There's something inside me that is waiting to come out, right? And what can I do about it? My first advice is always go to a therapist, seek help. The reason being, when you are, you know, in a safe space with a therapist can hold space for you in order for you to share whatever's going on inside you. And there's no judgment, there's no backlog of things that, you know, any connection that you have, your anger and all that, this is not connected to the therapist. Now, if you go to a friend, because you're not trained, chances are your friend is going to tell you that, oh, you know, just get over it. Why are you so angry? Or why are you so sad? Right? So that doesn't help. It just makes things worse. And you may just bury your things, you know, even deeper. And then that's where you lock the door again, you know, and opportunity is lost. And so it would be good firstly to see a therapist. The other thing would be to journal your thoughts, journal what comes up. Maybe write down what you're actually feeling and ask yourself questions like, why am I feeling this way? Don't expect an answer. Just write the question down. Why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? And then just write the first thing that comes, and then close the journal, look at it again at a later time, and you'll be surprised at what comes up.
That's great.
And from there, then you get a better idea of like, okay, so what do I need to do now? What's my direction? I always tell people, it's always best to seek help, seek professional help, because it's very hard to do self-healing when it comes to emotional pain. The reason is because you don't have a mirror. You can't see what's going on. You can't see your blind spots. Just like when you're doing fitness training, right? When someone is doing like a wrong posture, like they're doing something, they can't see themselves unless there is a mirror or someone corrects them and say, hey, this leg or this arm or whatever. So it's the same with, we can go into a loop with our emotional stuff. And if we don't have a therapist to point out certain things, then we are locked in a certain mindset. And
Yeah, that's so
able to see
true.
beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really valid. Like, I can really relate to that,
Mm.
particularly now that you've used that analogy, because that's exactly what I do in my line of work. And people go, oh my God, I had no idea I was doing that.
Yeah.
So, that's spot on, because we can only do our best. Obviously, we don't, when we're doing something, we don't intend on doing something half-heartedly. Well,
Yeah.
it depends. With those sort of things, like, if we want improvement, we try.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I'm just going to go in and do 50% today and
Yeah.
whatnot. So
Yeah.
if we've got someone there to help us to guide it, the actual process is, in fact, quicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably a little bit more enjoyable as far
Yes.
as what it could be if
Yeah.
you went all the detoured way yourself and was twice as long.
Exactly. You can go a long way and a wrong way for a very long time without realizing it, and but often in the spiritual circle, people like to say, but eventually you're gonna get there. Yeah, but why? Why? Why do you want to take the long route to get to your destination? Because the more healed you are, the more choices you have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When you're not healed, right? If something is bothering you or some pain, some trauma, then you're limited in your capacity because you're not able to see. Your worldview is narrow. Opportunities and choices becomes narrower because you're not able to see it, right?
Yeah.
And so the more you are healed, the more opportunities present themselves in life, in general, whatever it may be. So if like, for example, if you come from a background where you have been really, really traumatized when you were young, and so if you're not healed, then what will happen is your choices in life partners will be the same type of people that brought you up. And it will be the same because you have unhealed stuff. So you inevitably would trauma bond with someone who is just like the people who abused you, right? And so your choices become so limited. Your choices are just this type of people. But when you heal, then you open the scope up to welcome healthier people into your life, right? And so same with job opportunities, same with abundance, money, whatever it may be, right? It's always about the more healed we are, the more choices we have, the bigger the opportunities will present themselves. And it's not about brute force. People often say, oh, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to get there. But we will self-sabotage over and over again, until we're healed. That's how it is.
Yeah, that is so true, because I know I used to be in a hurry just to, come on, just get this done so I can move on with the next thing. And my mum always used to say, sometimes they know it's the journey, not the destination. You can't hurry these things. I said, yeah, but I need to hurry up so I can move on. I don't want to carry this around with me anymore. So she said, yeah, but you're missing a vital part of healing.
Yeah.
So there's that other extreme as well, where you're aware of it, but you don't really want to delve into it because you don't have the time, you don't have the patience, and you don't have I suppose the energy for it. So you just unknowingly brush it aside to move on to the next bit. So it is a real fine line of just, I think, maybe the word acceptance. You know, I'm not too sure if that's one of the things that looking at the situation and, you know, it's being open to the learning, being open to the hard work and to, you know, to feel all those feelings, but in a natural time frame, whereas in my case, I wanted to do it quickly because I didn't have time, which is like just as bad.
Because then, you're gonna miss the vital areas, right, of certain aspects within the psyche that needs addressing.
I
had a client once who worked with me and was willing to just scratch the surface. Right, she was carrying deep pain, deep trauma, a lot of emotional abuse went on there. And when I broached the subject that, you know, this particular thing that you're facing right now, we actually need to go deeper because there is so much buried in there, and it's actually the key to your success in life. But she said to me, do I really have to go back into the past? I don't want to look at the past, you know, I want to move forward. I said, but this is a big block. It is blinding you. You're not able to see because what you're seeing is this block, right? This trauma that you've been carrying with you is this big block. And if you don't clear that, and there's no quick fix to it. And if you don't clear that, then you're forever stuck. You find that you are like a hamster on a wheel. And it's been 2 years and she still refuses. So, you know, and from what I know, from what I observe, is like she's still like running on the spot. It's a shame, you know, when that happens because people don't realize that these things do create blocks. These things do blindness. They, you know, and, you know, blindness is not just physical, right? A lot of the times our blindness it's the mental, our intellectual blindness, our emotional blindness. And we're not able to see a lot. And it's a shame, you know, if we're not able to see that. And because life actually has so much to offer, but we stop ourselves from seeing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, the same as like you can transfer exactly that exactly the same problem, say, into the fitness industry. So say, for instance, it's the same, an average typical person. I would just use it. It's no one in particular, no one that I'm actually thinking of. I'm just a situation, just a lot of accumulative conversations I've had over the 20 years. And say a woman is just for 20 years or more, she's, you know, right since she goes back to her childhood, she's always suffered some sort of weight problem. And it can go back to, you know, childhood things from their mother. There's a lot of influences there. And the fact is that they might have been on a diet since they were 5 or 6 or from, you know, like a young childhood. And it could be just with the right intentions from the parent. But I'm dealing with this person and, you know, they'll carry a lot of baggage and a lot of emotional baggage as they go through. So they could be fearful of food. They could be fearful of, you know, the scales. They could be fearful of their appearance and lack of confidence. So there's a lot of like negative aspects obviously associated to that. And it's not so much, okay, let's lose the weight. Because if, you know, a diet, you know, okay, let's lose the weight. But if you get to your goal weight, are you happy? Right? And because they might do, and then they might have to relearn a whole new set of tools because it's not just about their appearance, it's their emotional journey along the way. Because, you know, that's why diets never work in a way where you've always got to stick to them. You've always got to work hard at them, and you're always using food as a tool, right? But if you taught how to, you know, eat properly and to lose weight and to, you know, to do it properly, you don't really need to follow anything but just some basic sort of principles. And that attachment to food and the fear of food and all that starts to dissolve. And then the healing starts to take place on the emotional side as well, because they're starting to understand on a deeper level that, okay, food's not just about this, you know, and then, but it's such a deep layer. And, you know, that's the interesting thing is that, you know, women, I'll just use women in general because, I mean, men there is as well, but I'm just talking the average person who I would see probably maybe 70% to 80% of women as opposed to men. And, you know, they could just torment themselves for so long. It's just heartbreaking. And to know that eventually they might get there, but what damage have they done to themselves in the meantime? And then it's not until when you can show them, and then you can sort of, you know, intercept a little bit, and you start to unravel some of these things. And the key here was about the food, because they see food as an evil thing, because that's what they've been, you know, attached to. And then they start to develop a different relationship with that, and it just has such a flow-on effect. But yeah, it's really difficult. So I've always sort of, tried to sort of intercept a little bit with people were younger who had children, because I never trained the children. It was always the parents, because that's where a lot of children would get their information from. Well, the more influential, put it that way. And so I'm hoping that the more education that I give, you know, to parents, that will have a flow-on effect to the children, because I've seen it the other way around as well, you know, where you know, parents have just been so scared to eat because of the fear of weight and, you know, whatnot. And then the child grows up exactly the same. So it's really hard.
Well, food is very emotional. You know, it's connected to our emotions, right? And because the stomach is the organ where we digest food, it's also the place where we digest emotions. And so, you know, it's so tied in, right? So closely tied in. And when we have, you know, like certain hang-ups about food, there's always an emotional thing, right? That is attached to it. You know, because as babies, right? When I think this is such a it's a good and not a good thing at the same time, because when we were babies, when we cry, right, we're emotional, we cry, and our parents have no idea why we're crying. They wonder, okay, it's the baby hungry, is the baby in pain, is the baby whatever it may be, right? Or the baby is cold, baby is lonely, and we just stick something in the mouth, right? Just to, you know, soothe the baby. So food or anything we put in the mouth has become like a soothing thing. And so it's so programmed within our DNA structure, right, that the two things are so closely connected, and we find it very hard to separate. And so I have found that people who have healed, right, emotionally healed the stuff, they find it easier to manage food. They're not obsessed by food. They don't overeat. They don't use food as a way to soothe, right? So they eat to live, right? They're not, you know, they're not like living to eat. So people who live to eat, right, they overconsume, and all, they're using food to soothe, you know, something that's going on, right? So like if they take a lot of sweet stuff, it's because there's a psychological meaning to it. It's because they lack sweetness in life. So they are, you know, they want something, you know, to replace that. So it's so, the thing is, you know, everyone is doing it, right? Our society is doing it. It's so acceptable that no one realizes how big a problem it can become, you know, if we don't, you know, if we don't have it under control, you know, when it comes to our physical health, emotional health. It's just so interconnected.
Oh, definitely. That's a really good way of putting it. When you're talking about, you know, digesting, that's where you digest your food, and that's where your emotions are buried deep there. And I think we spoke about this on another podcast about, you know, our connections and our emotional connections to food, because it can often, you know, reflect a memory or, you know, an emotional time that we want to replicate. And it's interesting, because when you say you've been working hard or you've gone through something, can you go, oh, I need to do that, I need to reward myself. And it's usually when it's a bad choice, although it's good at the time.
Exactly. Like why don't you reward yourself with something healthy? Why reward yourself?
Well, I'll get that. Let's get. I mean, I even fell into. It's not. I didn't fall into. Like, I'm just as human as anybody else, but I just recognise as an observer. And you know, I was mowing the lawns. It was a really hot day, and I went, I I'm not a big drinker by any means, and if I do, I'll have a wine or the occasional cocktail if I'm out for dinner, but I don't have anything at home. But however, I felt like a ginger beer because I feel that I'm going to have a ginger beer. And I thought, what am I going to have ginger beer for? I mean, it tastes nice. I can have that any other time. I think it was just because it was the way I was feeling at the time. I was hot and I was tired, and I really wanted something that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And that was just sweet. I wasn't hungry or anything. I went, and I was thinking, is this why people like a beer after?
I think so, because it cools you down, right? There's something about these gassy drinks that make it, I don't know, it feels like it is thirst quenching, but really, is it? Maybe it's not.
Well, in my case, mine's full of sugar.
It's funny how we want to reward ourselves, with things that are not necessarily healthy.
No, that's right. And that was the first thing I just really wanted to have. And I thought, well, like I said, I could have that any other time. But why wasn't I gravitated towards, something else? Why was it that?